Imagine this. You're peering through a submarine periscope at the shimmering expanse of the Pacific Ocean. The tropical sun beats down on waters that stretch endlessly in every direction. Then you see them. 20 small boats bobbing helplessly on the waves. Hundreds of men cling to life inside them, survivors from the ship you've just sent to the bottom of the sea. In any previous war, your duty would be clear. You'd sail away. You'd honor the ancient code of the sea that protects the shipwrecked, even enemies. But this is January 26, 1943. This is total war. And the man staring through that periscope is about to give an order that will haunt American military history for the next 80 years. His name is Commander Dudley "Mush" Morton, the most lethal submarine captain in the U.S. Navy. In moments, he will command his crew to do something unthinkable, something that will save American lives while destroying his own legacy, something that will blur the line between warrior and war criminal forever. This is the story of how one man revolutionized submarine warfare and paid a price measured not in battles lost, but in humanity surrendered. This is the story of USS Wahoo and the day American submariners opened fire on defenseless men in lifeboats. July 17, 1907. Owensboro, Kentucky. 1,000 miles from the nearest ocean, Dudley Walker Morton draws his first breath. His father runs a modest shop in this landlocked American town. The closest young Dudley gets to naval warfare is reading adventure novels about daring sea captains and watching the Ohio River roll past. Nothing in his childhood suggests he'll become one of the most feared submarine commanders to ever hunt the Pacific. But history has a way of finding its instruments. June 1926. Morton walks through the gates of the United States Naval Academy at Annapolis. He's part of a class that will face something their instructors can barely imagine, a war so vast, so brutal, that it will consume more of them than any graduating class since America tore itself apart in the Civil War. Picture Morton on those academy grounds. 6 feet tall, built like a freight train, with hands so massive they look like they could crush coal into diamonds. His jaw juts forward with such prominence that his classmates immediately christened him Mush Mouth, later shortened to Mush after a popular comic strip character. The nickname sticks. It will follow him to glory and to his grave. On the wrestling mat and football field, Morton is a force of nature. But it's in the classroom, specifically submarine tactics class, where something unusual emerges. While other midshipmen study defensive maneuvers and cautious approaches, Morton's papers obsess with one thing: attack angles, torpedo spreads, kill shots. His instructor notes it in an evaluation that reads almost like prophecy. Lieutenant Morton possesses an aggressive spirit unusual in submarine officers. This trait will serve him well in war, though it must be tempered with judgment. Judgment. Remember that word. It will become the central question of Morton's life. He graduates in 1930, Ensign Dudley Morton, United States Navy. His first assignments take him to surface ships, the aircraft carrier Saratoga, the heavy cruiser Chicago. But surface warfare feels wrong to him. Too exposed, too conventional. There are too many rules, too much ceremony. Not enough room for the kind of aggressive tactics burning inside him. In 1930, he finds his calling. Submarine School, New London, Connecticut. Morton descends into the claustrophobic steel tubes that hunt beneath the waves and immediately knows this is where he belongs. Down here in the darkness, where one man's decisions can mean life or death for 79 souls, Where there are no witnesses except your crew and the fish, Morton feels truly alive. The pre-war years take him across the Pacific, serving on the submarine tender Canopus, patrolling Philippine waters aboard the S-37, studying the new fleet submarines being constructed at Philadelphia Navy Yard. These boats are marvels, longer than a football field, armed with 10 torpedo tubes, capable of staying submerged for hours. They're also incredibly dangerous. Submarines in 1940 have the highest peacetime fatality rate of any naval service. Battery explosions, hull failures, training accidents. The boats attract a particular kind of officer. Men comfortable with danger, men who don't need crowds to feel important. By August 1940, Lieutenant Commander Morton takes command of his first submarine, the R-5, an older boat used for training. He immediately posts a sign in the control room that captures his entire philosophy in 5 words: "We will take the fight to the enemy." His crew reads it and wonders if their new captain is brave or insane. They're about to find out. December 7, 1941. The date that transforms everything. Japanese aircraft swarm over Pearl Harbor like steel hornets. Within 2 hours, they've crippled America's Pacific Fleet. 18 warships sunk or damaged. Over 2,000 Americans dead. The United States, caught flat-footed and humiliated, is dragged into a war it never wanted against an enemy it underestimated. Within hours of the attack, Chief of Naval Operations Admiral Harold Stark issues an order that will define the entire Pacific Submarine War. The message is brief, the implications staggering. Execute unrestricted air and submarine warfare against Japan. Read those words again. Unrestricted. In one sentence, America abandons decades of naval doctrine. International maritime law, treaties signed in peacetime by civilized nations, crumbles into irrelevance. The rules that governed warfare at sea for generations, gone. The ancient code that protected merchant sailors and survivors, discarded. This isn't warfare anymore. Something darker, something total. Submarine commanders receive their new mandate. Sink everything flying the Japanese flag. Merchant ships, transports, tankers, fishing boats. If it's Japanese, it dies. No warnings, no rescue attempts, no mercy. Morton, now a lieutenant commander, is exactly the kind of officer the Navy desperately needs. Because here's the uncomfortable truth about America's submarine force in 1942. It's failing spectacularly. Of the 363 submarine patrols conducted during that first year of war, most return with torpedoes still loaded in their tubes. Captains trained in peacetime caution simply cannot adapt to total war's demands. They approach enemy convoys carefully, attack from maximum range, fire 1 or 2 torpedoes, then immediately dive deep and run away. It's not cowardice, it's conditioning. These men joined a Navy that valued preservation of assets over aggressive action. They're scouts, not killers. But Morton is a killer. November 1942. He's ordered to Pearl Harbor as a prospective commanding officer, Navy speak for "we're testing you for command." He's assigned to observe aboard USS Wahoo, a Gatto-class fleet submarine whose current captain, Lieutenant Commander Marvin Kennedy, has proven adequate. Not great, not terrible, just adequate. For 8 weeks, Morton shadows Kennedy on Wahoo's second war patrol, watching every decision, every approach, every missed opportunity. He sees Kennedy attack from safe distances. He watches him break off engagements when the enemy gets too close. He witnesses excessive caution strangling tactical opportunities. Morton confides to fellow officer Dick O'Kane, We're fighting this war like we're afraid to get our paint scratched." The Navy agrees. Kennedy is relieved. Morton gets his boat.
December 31st, 1942. Brisbane, Australia. Command of USS Wahoo officially transfers to 35-year-old Dudley Morton. His first act tells you everything about how this will go. He gathers the entire crew, 79 men, in the forward torpedo room. Unlike the formal, distant Kennedy, Morton speaks plainly, almost conversationally, but his words carry the weight of a revolution. "Wahoo is expendable. We will take every reasonable precaution, but our mission is to sink enemy ships. We're going to pursue them aggressively. We're not going to run from destroyers. We're going to attack them." Silence. You could hear the ocean breathing against the hull. No submarine commander talks like this. Submarines are valuable assets. They cost millions of dollars, take years to build, carry highly trained crews. You don't throw them into harm's way like expendable ammunition. But Morton isn't finished. He produces hand-painted signs bearing 3 words in blood-red letters: "Shoot the son of a bitches." He posts them throughout the boat. In the torpedo rooms, the control room, the galley. Impossible to miss, impossible to misunderstand. One crew member later recalls thinking, "Holy hell, our new captain is absolutely insane." He wasn't insane. He was exactly what total war demanded. Morton doesn't just change tactics, he revolutionizes the entire concept of submarine warfare. Traditional doctrine keeps the captain at the periscope during attacks. He calls out observations, makes decisions, fires torpedoes, all while trying to maintain spatial awareness of a 3-dimensional battlefield he can only glimpse in 2-second periscope exposures. Morton realizes this is insane. It's asking one man to be observer, calculator, and decision-maker simultaneously. So he does something no submarine captain has ever done. He stations his executive officer, Lieutenant Dick O'Kane, at the periscope during attacks. O'Kane describes what he sees. Morton, freed from the periscope, absorbs all incoming information: sound bearings, torpedo data, radar contacts, ship positions. He can process the entire tactical picture, think 3 moves ahead, make split-second decisions without visual tunnel vision. It requires absolute trust in a subordinate, something most captains can't muster, but it's devastatingly effective. The innovation extends beyond tactics. Morton eliminates the rigid formality that characterizes most submarines. He knows every crew member by name, knows their hometowns, asks about their families. Yeoman Forrest Sterling, who serves as lookout, later writes, "Captain Morton made us feel like we were the best submarine crew in the Pacific, and we were determined to prove him right." January 16th, 1943. Wahoo departs Brisbane for her 3rd war patrol. Morton has spent the refit period drilling his crew relentlessly. They practice battle surfaces, emergency surfacing with all weapons manned, until they can execute in under 30 seconds. Morton insists every man understand operations outside his specialty. Torpedo men learn radar. Electricians practice loading torpedoes. This cross-training will save lives in the chaos that comes. Their assigned patrol area makes veteran submariners blanch. Wewak Harbor, New Guinea. It's a major Japanese staging base considered too dangerous for American submarines to approach. Previous boats observed from safe distances, gathering intelligence but avoiding engagement. Morton sails directly into the harbor. January 24th, 0800 hours. Wahoo operates in waters so shallow, her keel barely clears the bottom. Through the periscope, Morton spots a Japanese destroyer nested with submarines at anchor. He fires 3 torpedoes. They all miss. The destroyer immediately gets underway, heading directly for Wahoo's position at flank speed. Standard doctrine demands immediate crash dive and evasion. Run silent, run deep, pray they don't find you. Morton holds position. Range? He asks calmly. 1,200 yards and closing fast, O'Kane responds. The destroyer's bow wave is visible through the periscope now. Her depth charges are armed and ready. 800 yards, Captain. Morton waits. The crew holds its collective breath. Every instinct screams, dive, get out of here. Fire 5. The torpedo leaps from the tube. Seconds feel like hours. Then, boom! The torpedo strikes the destroyer at midships, breaking her back in a massive explosion. Through the periscope, O'Kane watches Japanese sailors literally flying through the air. 100 men, stationed as lookouts, scattered like leaves. The destroyer sinks in minutes. Morton has proven something revolutionary. Aggression can overcome superior enemy tactics. The Japanese Navy has spent months perfecting anti-submarine warfare. They have protocols, training, experience. And Morton just ignored all of it, sailed into their harbor, and killed their destroyer by refusing to blink. 2 days later, the mathematics of total war catch up with him. January 26, 1943, morning. Wahoo's radar detects a large convoy northeast of New Guinea. Morton does something that should be impossible. He surfaces Wahoo in broad daylight in enemy-controlled waters and uses the submarine's superior surface speed to gain attack position. This violates every principle of submarine survival. Submarines operate submerged during daylight in hostile waters. That's not doctrine, that's common sense. A surface submarine is vulnerable, exposed, easy to spot. But Morton understands something others don't. Japanese lookouts are trained to scan for periscopes, that telltale feather of spray cutting through the waves. They often miss fully surfaced submarines at distance, their brains simply not registering what they're seeing. The convoy consists of 6 ships with destroyer escorts. Morton tracks them through the morning, positioning Wahoo with surgical precision. 11:30 hours. He fires 4 torpedoes at what appears to be the largest transport. Through the periscope, O'Kane watches them run true. Hot, straight, and normal. The torpedoes slam into the 5,447-ton Buyo Maru. The transport shudders, lists heavily, begins settling by the stern. Through binoculars, Morton watches her crew abandon ship, approximately 20 lifeboats and motorized launches evacuating into the tropical waters. Wahoo surfaces to recharge batteries depleted by the morning's high-speed chase. Standard procedure after an attack. The Japanese convoy has scattered, no immediate threats visible. Then Morton raises his binoculars and examines the lifeboats more carefully. They're packed with men, hundreds of them, maybe thousands, and they're all wearing uniforms. Through the magnification, he can see that they're rowing towards the New Guinea coast, just a few miles away. These aren't shipwreck survivors hoping for rescue. They're invasion force, using lifeboats as landing craft.
Morton calls his officers to the conning tower. The morning sun beats down. The ocean is almost preternaturally calm. "Gentlemen," Morton says, "we have a situation." He passes the binoculars. One by one, his officers look. They see what he sees. Hundreds of Japanese soldiers, headed for shore where they'll reinforce enemy positions and kill Americans within days. "What would you do?" Morton asks. Lieutenant Dick O'Kane speaks first. "International law prohibits tacking shipwreck survivors, Captain." Morton's response comes immediately. "International law also prohibits unrestricted submarine warfare, which we've been conducting since Pearl Harbor. Those aren't shipwreck survivors. They're enemy combatants using boats as landing craft." Lieutenant George Grider, the engineering officer, wrestles visibly with his conscience. "Sir, we don't know if they're all soldiers. There could be crew members, even prisoners." Morton's jaw tightens, that prominent feature his classmates nicknamed him for. His voice drops, becomes harder. Every Japanese soldier who reaches New Guinea means dead Americans. The Army Air Force bombs entire cities. We're going to stop these soldiers from reaching shore. He turns to the weapons officer. Battle surface, man all weapons. And there it is, the moment. The point where history pivots. In the engineering spaces below, men exchange glances. This isn't what they trained for. They practiced torpedo attacks, not this. But orders are orders. The crew rushes to battle stations. The 4-inch deck gun is manned. 2 20mm cannons swing into position. Machine guns are loaded and trained on the distant boats. Lieutenant Grider pulls out his personal log. His hand trembles slightly as he writes words that will echo through naval history. The captain has ordered all weapons to fire on the boats. This is not what any of us expected when we joined the submarine service. On the conning tower, Morton watches through binoculars as a figure in one of the boats waves something white. A shirt, maybe. Or a flag. A surrender attempt. Morton orders a warning shot fired from the deck gun, 1 round into the water near the largest lifeboat. The response is immediate. Small arms fire from the boats peppers Wahoo's hull. Several bullets ping off the conning tower, inches from where Morton stands. In his mind, this changes everything. They fired first. This isn't massacre. It's combat. All weapons, Morton commands, his voice carrying across the deck. Open fire. The 4-inch deck gun speaks first, a tremendous crack that echoes across the water. The shell hits the largest motorized launch dead center, disintegrating it in a shower of wood and bodies. Then the 20mm cannons join in. Rapid-fire thuds that walk tracers across the water. Finally, the machine guns, a sustained roar that turns the peaceful tropical morning into something from a nightmare. For 30 to 45 minutes, Wahoo makes a single methodical pass along the line of boats. Yeoman Forrest Sterling stands his lookout position, watching through binoculars. Later, he'll write about what he sees with the clarity that trauma burns into memory. A man swimming towards Wahoo, apparently attempting to board or surrender. Gunner's mate William White asks Morton if they should take him prisoner. Morton's alleged response, "Hell no! I don't want the son of a bitch. Do you?" The machine guns find the swimmer. The water around him turns red. Boat after boat is methodically destroyed. The larger launches by the deck gun. The smaller boats by sustained machine gun fire. Men jump into the water, trying to swim away. The guns follow them there. Some cling to wreckage. The guns find them there. Some raise their hands. The guns don't distinguish. Sterling will later write in his memoir, Wake of the Wahoo, "I saw bodies floating face down. The water turned red around the shattered boats. Some men tried to swim away. Others clung to wreckage. The guns targeted them all. No distinction was made between those who fought and those who surrendered." In the control room below, George Grider hears the guns and feels the submarine shudder with each round from the deck gun. He can't see what's happening. He doesn't need to. The sustained firing tells him everything. 15 years later, when he writes his memoir, Warfish, he'll struggle to reconcile the Morton he admired with the commander who ordered this action. Mush was not a cruel man, not a sadist. He was a fighter, determined to win the war by any means necessary. When the guns finally fall silent, approximately 300 men are dead. No boats remain intact. The oil-slicked water is filled with bodies and debris, a scene of carnage that belongs in medieval warfare, not modern naval combat. Morton orders Wahoo to clear the area immediately, pursuing the scattered convoy. In his patrol report, he writes with clinical detachment, "Destroyed all boats. Estimated 1,500 to 6,000 enemy troops. The actual number, discovered only after the war, is 282 killed. What Morton doesn't know, what he can't possibly know, is that among those desperate figures in the lifeboats were 195 Indian prisoners of war, Allied soldiers, men captured at Singapore, refusing Japanese demands to fight against Britain, condemned to slave labor. They wore the same uniforms as their captors. They spoke languages Morton couldn't hear over the gunfire. They tried to signal their identity as allies. And they died by American bullets. Anyway.
February 7th, 1943. Pearl Harbor. Wahoo returns to a hero's welcome. A broom is lashed to the periscope shears, the traditional signal of a clean sweep, a totally successful patrol. Small Japanese flags painted on the conning tower indicate ships claimed sunk. Submarines crowd the pier, sailors cheer. Morton has done what seemed impossible. He's taken the fight directly into Japanese waters and won. But in the officers' clubs and torpedo workshops, veteran submariners discuss something else in hushed tones: the lifeboat incident. Vice Admiral Charles Lockwood, commander of Pacific Fleet submarines, faces an impossible situation. Morton has violated international law, potentially exposing every American submariner to retaliation if captured. The Japanese could use this as justification for any atrocity they choose. But Morton is also Lockwood's most successful commander. He's proven that aggression works. He's inspired a timid submarine force to become hunters. His tactics are already being studied and copied throughout the fleet. Lockwood's solution is bureaucratic genius. Praise Morton publicly while ensuring no official encouragement of similar actions. Celebrate his successes, quietly bury the uncomfortable details. Captain John Babe Brown interviews Morton extensively about the incident. According to declassified records, Morton shows zero remorse. He maintains that preventing enemy troops from reaching shore was legitimate military action, period. The Navy's response speaks volumes. Morton is recommended for the Medal of Honor. The recommendation is denied and downgraded to a 4th Navy Cross. No official reason is given, but every naval historian agrees it's because of those 30 minutes on January 26th. Other submarine commanders react with divided opinions. Some understand Morton's logic. In total war, why spare enemy soldiers when they're most vulnerable? Others maintain that Americans don't shoot helpless men in the water, that there are lines that shouldn't be crossed regardless of circumstances. The most significant response comes from Lieutenant Commander Dick O'Kane, Morton's executive officer. O'Kane will go on to become the war's most successful submarine commander by ships sunk. Until his death in 1994, he defends Morton's decision. Those troops were armed and heading for shore. They fired on us first. Mush made a military decision to prevent enemy reinforcement of New Guinea. It wasn't pretty, but war never is. The full tragedy emerges only through post-war investigation. The Buyo Maru's passenger manifest reveals she was carrying 1,126 souls, 336 Japanese soldiers and 760 Indian prisoners of war from the 16th Punjab Regiment. These Indian soldiers had been captured during Singapore's fall, Britain's greatest military disaster. The Japanese offered them a choice: join the Indian National Army and fight against Britain, or face slave labor. They refused collaboration and were condemned to slave labor camps in New Guinea. The Japanese packed them into Buyo Maru's holds without marking the ship as carrying POWs, a clear Geneva Convention violation. When Morton's torpedoes struck, Japanese guards prioritized their own soldiers during evacuation. Indians who reached the boats were often pushed back into the water. When Wahoo's guns opened fire, these Indian prisoners tried desperately to signal their identity. Some spoke English, shouting their allegiance. The gunfire was too loud, the distance too great. Their desperate attempts to identify themselves as allies failed. Private Ravi Singh, one of the few Indian survivors, provides devastating testimony to British investigators in 1946. We thought the Americans had come to save us. In Singapore, British officers told us Americans treated prisoners well. When the shooting started, we couldn't believe it. Some men stood up with hands raised. They died standing. Of the 195 Indian prisoners of war who died, most were killed by American bullets, not by the torpedo that sank their prison ship. The Japanese government, when confronted post-war with evidence of unmarked prisoner transports, offers no apology. The Indian government never officially comments. The 195 dead remain forgotten footnotes to a larger tragedy. Despite, or perhaps because of the controversy, Morton's aggressive tactics transform American submarine warfare. Before Morton, Pacific Fleet submarines sank an average of 0.5 ships per patrol. After Morton demonstrates what aggression can achieve, that average triples. Submarine commanders who had been cautious become hunters. The silent service finds its voice, and that voice roars with fury. Admiral Lockwood writes in his classified war diary, "Morton has shown our commanders what is possible. His tactics, while sometimes questionable, have revolutionized our approach. We are no longer a timid force hiding from destroyers. We are predators." The statistics bear this out. 1942, American submarines sank 180 Japanese ships. 1943, they sank 335. 1944, they're sinking ships faster than Japan can build them. By war end, 250 American submarines will strangle the maritime nation that depends on imports for survival. Morton's specific innovations become standard doctrine. Executive officers manning the periscope during attacks, surface attacks in daylight, battle surfaces. Most importantly, the attitude that submarines are offensive weapons, not defensive scouts. Commander Lawson Red Ramage, conducting a surface night attack that will earn him the Medal of Honor, explicitly credits Morton. "I thought of Mush up there on the bridge, never flinching as destroyers charged him. If he could do it, so could I." But there's a dark side to this transformation. The Japanese Navy responds to Morton's actions with escalating brutality. Within weeks, orders circulate through Japanese submarine commands. American submarines show no mercy and deserve none in return. Commander Tatsunosuke Arisumi of submarine I-8 becomes Japan's most notorious perpetrator. On March 26, 1944, after sinking the Dutch merchant ship Tsilok, he orders 97 survivors brought on board. Then he systematically murders them with swords, hammers, and wrenches while crew members film and laugh. Only 5 survive by feigning death. The escalation continues. By war end, 374 American submariners are captured. Only 168 survive Japanese captivity, a 50% death rate. Japanese interrogators specifically ask captured submariners about attacks on survivors, using any admission to justify torture. The cycle of retaliation reaches its horrific peak with the Hell ships, unmarked Japanese transports carrying Allied prisoners in horrific conditions. American submarines, unaware of their human cargo, sink 19 such ships, killing approximately 21,000 Allied prisoners. The tragedy of the Buyo Maru repeats dozens of times, each incident adding to the war's mounting atrocities. Morton never expresses public remorse for the Buyo Maru incident. If anything, he becomes more aggressive. Wahoo's 4th patrol takes her into the Yellow Sea, waters so shallow the Japanese commanders believe them unnavigable for submarines. Morton sinks 9 ships. The 5th patrol penetrates the Sea of Japan itself, the Emperor's private lake surrounded by home islands. No American submarine has entered these waters and survived. Morton not only survives, but sinks 4 ships before escaping through the heavily mined La Perouse Strait. His reputation reaches mythic proportions. Newspapers call him the one-man Navy. General MacArthur personally awards him the Army Distinguished Service Cross. But George Grider notices changes in his former captain during a brief reunion in August 1943. Morton seems tired, driven by demons he can't name. The easy laugh comes less frequently. When Grider asks about the lifeboat incident, Morton changes the subject. "We do what we have to do," is all he'll say. September 1943. Morton takes Wahoo on her 7th patrol, again into the Sea of Japan. Before departing, he tells Dick O'Kane, now commanding his own submarine, "If we don't make it back, I want you to know you're the best exec I ever had. Take care of yourself." It's the last conversation they'll ever have.
October 11th, 1943. Japanese naval records indicate an American submarine is attacked by aircraft in La Perouse Strait. A massive explosion is observed, followed by an oil slick and debris. USS Wahoo and all 79 hands are never seen again. Commander Dudley "Mush" Morton is 36 years old. The Navy recommends him posthumously for the Medal of Honor. The recommendation is denied, downgraded to a 4th Navy Cross. No official reason is given. But everyone knows why. For 50 years, the Buyo Maru incident remains classified. The official patrol report, sanitized for public consumption, mentions only that Wahoo destroyed lifeboats containing enemy troops. The details, the duration of fire, the methods used, the number killed are locked away. When George Grider publishes his memoir Warfish in 1958, naval censors require him to minimize the incident to a few vague paragraphs. The classification serves multiple purposes. It protects Morton's family from controversy, prevents Japanese propaganda exploitation, and most importantly, avoids uncomfortable questions about American conduct in the Good War. Only in 1995, after most participants have died, do the full details emerge through Freedom of Information Act requests. The revelation sparks renewed debate about submarine warfare ethics and the moral compromises of total war. October 2006, a Russian diving team discovers Wahoo's wreck in La Perouse Strait, 213 feet below the surface. The submarine lies broken in 3 sections, evidence of catastrophic explosion. The bow section, containing the forward torpedo room where Morton first addressed his crew, is intact. Inside lie the remains of 79 American sailors, still on eternal patrol. The discovery renews interest in Morton and the Buyo Maru incident. Japanese researchers, accessing previously closed archives, find disturbing evidence that the Imperial Navy specifically targeted Wahoo for destruction, codenamed Operation Vengeance for Buyo. Radio intercepts suggest Japanese commanders knew exactly which submarine they were hunting in October 1943. More disturbing are discoveries about the Indian prisoners. Research reveals they attempted to signal Wahoo during the attack. Several spoke English and tried shouting their identity. The gunfire was too loud, the distance too great. Their desperate attempts to identify themselves as allies failed. Today, Morton's legacy remains irreducibly complex. The U.S. Navy continues to honor him as one of its greatest submarine commanders. His aggressive tactics are studied at the Naval War College as examples of successful innovation, yet the Buyo Maru incident cannot be erased. In 2003, when the Navy considered naming a new attack submarine after Morton, protests from human rights organizations and Indian American groups forced reconsideration. The submarine was named USS Texas instead. Even 60 years later, Morton's actions remain divisive. George Grider, who knew Morton better than most, spent his final years wrestling with his commander's legacy. In a 1988 interview, 3 years before his death, Grider said, "Mush was the bravest man I ever knew and the most effective submarine commander of the war. But what happened that day haunts me. We became something we weren't supposed to be. We crossed a line that shouldn't be crossed." Dick O'Kane, who inherited Morton's aggressive spirit and became the war's most successful submarine commander, defended Morton to the end. In his last public interview in 1993, O'Kane insisted, "War is not a game with rules. The Japanese started this war with a sneak attack. They tortured and murdered prisoners. Mush did what he thought necessary to win. Judge him by the standards of that time, not by peacetime morality." But can we?
should we? Forrest Sterling, Wahoo's yeoman who witnessed the lifeboat attack, lived until 2002. In his memoir, published in 1999, he provides perhaps the most honest assessment. I was 21 years old, standing lookout while we killed those men in the boats. I saw one trying to surrender with a white flag. I've lived with that image for 60 years. Captain Morton was a great commander who made us the best submarine in the Pacific, but what we did that day was wrong. We knew it was wrong while we were doing it, but we did it anyway because the captain ordered it, and we trusted him. He continues, "People ask if I hate Morton for making me part of that. I don't. He was trying to win the war the only way he knew how, by killing every enemy he could find. The real crime was the war itself, that it made good men like Morton into killers, and killers into heroes. We celebrated him for sinking ships and gave him medals for sending thousands to their deaths. Then we act surprised when he killed men in lifeboats. The truth is, submarine warfare was always about killing helpless people. Every merchant ship we torpedoed was full of sailors who never had a chance. We just didn't have to watch them die. That day with the lifeboats, we had to watch. We had to participate. And that's the only difference. We saw the faces of the men we killed. The wreck of USS Wahoo lies in international waters between Japan and Russia, an iron tomb for 79 Americans who followed their commander into legend and death. No effort has been made to recover the bodies. The submarine is considered a war grave, protected by international agreement from salvage or disturbance. In 2008, a joint American-Japanese expedition placed memorial plaques at the site. The American plaque reads, "To the brave men of USS Wahoo, still on patrol." The Japanese plaque memorializes all who died in the seas between our nations. Neither mentions the 195 Indian prisoners who died on January 26, 1943, caught between empires in a war not of their making. The story of USS Wahoo's attack on lifeboat survivors forces us to confront uncomfortable truths about warfare's capacity to corrupt even the most professional military forces. Morton didn't act from cruelty or sadism. He acted from a logical extension of total war's premises. If the enemy must be destroyed, why not destroy him when he's most vulnerable? Lieutenant Commander Dudley Walker Morton crossed a line that day in waters north of New Guinea, a line drawn by international law, maritime tradition, and basic humanity. He crossed it believing military necessity justified his actions, that saving American lives required killing Japanese soldiers even when they posed no immediate threat. The 195 Indian prisoners who died alongside those Japanese soldiers stand as permanent testimony to the danger of such logic. The submarine force Morton inspired went on to strangle Japan's maritime lifelines, contributing significantly to Allied victory. His aggressive tactics revolutionized submarine warfare and inspired a generation of commanders. Yet his legacy remains forever shadowed by those 30 to 45 minutes when American naval power revealed its capacity for acts that peacetime morality unconditionally condemns. In the end, Morton proved that American submariners could be as ruthless as any warrior in history. Whether this was necessary, justified, or criminal remains a question each generation must answer anew. The USS Wahoo rests 213 feet below the surface of La Perouse Strait, holding the remains of 79 Americans who followed their commander into history's darkest waters. They remain on eternal patrol, a reminder that war's greatest casualty is often our humanity, and that some lines, once crossed, can never be uncrossed. The 282 men who died in the water that January day, Japanese soldiers, Indian prisoners, men with families and futures, became casualties not just of war, but of war's logic taken to its ultimate, terrible conclusion. This is Morton's true legacy, not just the ships he sank or the tactics he pioneered, but the eternal question his actions pose about what we're willing to do to win and whether any victory is worth achieving through means that destroy what we claim to defend.